Hey there and welcome back to another Disney video. And a bit over a month ago, we saw the release of the latest film by Walt Disney Animated Studios, Encanto, which tells the story of Mirabel Madrigal, a member of a magical family that has no magical powers, as she tries to save the family from ruin and the end of their magical miracle that saved the people of their town. Now obviously, it's been a fair while since this film came out, having been released in November, but since I was having a little bit of a Christmas break and was catching up on a bunch of other things, I only just got around to actually watching it on Disney+. So today, I figured it would be as good a time as any to give my thoughts on the film. And with that being said, let's get started. Now obviously, as is always the case with modern Disney films, especially the most recent batch of Disney films, visually, the movie looked absolutely stunning. The environments and backgrounds were insanely beautiful, the characters were all different, diverse and visually striking, and the animation itself was fluid and beautiful. And seriously, from a visual standpoint, I'd argue the film's virtually flawless. I mean, there's one shot during the song Surface Pressure where you can see the fine little hairs on Louisa's neck glinting in the sun. Like seriously, what the hell? How did I possibly do that? When I was a kid, I thought that things like the Woody Gets Refurbished scene from Toy Story 2 was truly the height of animation. But everything just keeps getting better and better with every film that gets released, and this is just the culmination of all of that development. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where I feel like this is the new normal. That we all kind of expect to see Disney and Pixar films look this good because, duh, it's Disney. Of course they're going to be the company that pushes things forward. So it gives you this sort of mixed feeling. On one hand, it blows your socks off because these films keep pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible and creating a new top level standard. And then on the other hand, you can't help but think, it's Disney. Of course they have amazing animation. But then you have to compare that to a lot of other animation studios, and rarely do they ascend to the heights that we've seen from the Disney affiliates in the past decade or so. We've gotten so used to keeping them separate, and declaring that it's not impressive because they always look good. But when you add the context of how they look compared to everybody else, I think it really goes to show how good these films are, and Encanto is no exception to this. But that being said, I'm a little bit disappointed that recently when I go and see a Disney film, the biggest takeaway I have is, oh wow, that looks really good. And I feel like that really shouldn't be the case. Like I said before, at this point we've been conditioned to expect high quality visuals from a Disney film. So realistically, it shouldn't be the thing that you take away from the first viewing. And yet, it often is these days. And don't get me wrong, the story was by no means bad. It was very well written. It's just, it didn't wow me like I would have liked it to. And I mean, there was a lot to like about the film, like Mirabel's whole arc, the Bruno twist, and the grandmother's controlling nature stemming from her long-buried grief. But beyond that, I feel like the story was carried by exciting visuals and fun characters. The story itself wasn't enough to carry the success of the film. It should have been the main attraction, but it felt more like a sideshow to the visuals. And the family dynamics, they were fun, but a lot of them felt surface level. And the tension between the different conflicting family members felt too easily resolved, especially the conflict between the grandmother, who was positioned as basically the main antagonist, and Mirabel, who she'd shunned for like 10 years, viewing her as the awkward and shameful part of the family, the threat. And then she blames her for everything, only to apologize like 5 minutes later and suddenly it's just all good. It just feels all a bit rushed. And the same with the older sister, who's quite needlessly harsh to her younger sister, viewing her as well as the family screw-up. Yes, they try to push the narrative of her feeling the need to be perfect to make up for Mirabel, but I feel like this conflict is also a bit of a stretch to just get over so quickly. I just feel like based on the story being told, that it could have benefited from an extra 20-25 minutes from which to tell the story. And I mean, maybe that would have felt too long and dragged things out, but when you have that many characters and the main source of conflict is the internal dynamics of this massive family and not an actual villainous character from outside, you sort of need to work a bit more at creating a more satisfying outcome for all these different relationships. And it felt similar to Raya and the Last Dragon, where you have this character who's clearly in the wrong and does some pretty bad stuff, and is then completely forgiven within 5 minutes. It's a conclusion that doesn't really feel all that earned, and it's frustrating because otherwise the actual story is really unique and intriguing. With it initially being set up for a Bruno villain story, only for it to be revealed that the real villain is the toxic family dynamics that have been brewing since the adults first got their own powers. And this never really gets resolved. I mean, all we get's a half-hearted apology and then everyone hugs it out. it just felt a little bit lacking. And even beyond the story, did anybody else find the music and songs a little bit, I don't know, lacking? Like, don't get me wrong, the soundtrack is really good, vibrant and fun and catchy, and I especially love Surface Pressure and We Don't Talk About Bruno. Seriously, those songs are really great. And hell, the other songs are great too, but for anybody else, was there not a song that really jumped out and just gripped you? Like, I'm acknowledging that all the songs are fun, but there isn't that one iconic song that sort of takes off with a life of its own and ascends beyond the movie and draws people in. I don't know, like Circle of Life and Hakuna Matata, or A Whole New World, or Part of Your World, or Let It Go. You know the level I'm talking about. The songs that even if you have never, ever even come close to watching the film, you'd be able to recognize that song and maybe even sing it because they have seeped their way into the world's collective consciousness. And I just feel like Encanto's songs, whilst good, never really make it to that level. I mean, I watched the movie a fair while after it released, and I really had no idea about any of the songs at all. Maybe I had my head in the sand, but I know for a fact I would have been able to recognize Let It Go long before I ever saw the film itself. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was disappointed in Encanto, because really I came into the film with zero expectations, and in the end, I really enjoyed it. But I think even from that place of zero expectation, you come away from it feeling like it could have been, I don't know, a lot better. It could have been a lot more. Maybe if they had that one song that really just set the world on fire and seeped into pop culture. Or maybe if they had another 15 to 20 minutes to try and flesh out the conflict and the climax and the resolution of the story to make sure it didn't feel rushed and that it had time to breathe properly. So yeah, like I said, it's good, but I feel like it could have been more. And I think they really need to focus on the way that they resolve their storylines, because they seem to try and do as much as they can in the main body of the film, and then try to wrap it up in as little time as possible. That being said though, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the film? Like it? Hate it? Anything you'd change? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.